Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with more WNBA news. And of course, Asia Wilson um, spoke in an article, I want to say a couple months ago, in regards to Caitlin Clark in the league. And she made an interesting comment that I think has a lot of validity to it. If you hear me out in this conversation, of course. She stated that Caitlin Clark erased the history of the WNBA when she entered the league. Now, when I first saw this comment, I wanted to know the context of it and what did she mean, because I think Asia's very respectful as far as other players in her car leagues, and as far as just being respectful of other players and what they feel. And I don't think she's ever disrespectful. So I wanted to get full context on it because, of course, the headlines is going to sound crazier than what it is without the context. So she did say that Caitlin is still great, but she felt that other critics and other people that watch the league disregarded the history of the league and just said, "Hey, Caitlin's saving these guys. Caitlin is the reason why the league is where it is." The people who came before her didn't do anything, so there was a lot of disrespect that people feel that came along with the Caitlin Clark train that everybody was on. And I don't think it's any fault of Caitlin Clark's, but it's just comes up. It's what comes with the league. So I bet when Jordan was coming to the league, I don't think they were, talking bad about Dr. J and about Will Chamberlain and Bill Russell. They talked about how great these guys were. Bill Russell winning, to what 11 rings, and then you had Wilt Chamberlain, who had the scoring title, who scored 100 points in a game and who averaged like 44 points and 20 some rebounds a game, averaged like 30 and 20 for a career. They wasn't talking about, the league was boring then. There was no competition. Well, they did talk about that a little bit, but for the most part, people were talking about how great these guys were and what their ability were. They weren't talking about like, well, the league was boring. Nobody wants to watch it. But then that probably comes with a male dominated field as well. When women's sports, it's looked at a little differently. Just because they can't dunk, they think it's boring and uninteresting. But Asia is saying that, hey, this league, there's people that's done work before Caitlin that's been doing great work that don't get credited for it. The Cheryl Swoops of the world, the Lisa Leslie's, who the first player in the WNBA to dunk a basketball in a game. You have the Maya Moores, the Diana Taurasi's, who played 20 plus years. She was basically like the LeBron of the league. She played for a long time, accumulated a lot of stats, set the door or open the door for a Caitlin Clark to look up to know that you have that avenue that you can go to be able to win. And what the Houston Comets were able to do back in the 90s when the league first started. It's just phenomenal talent that came through that WNBA tree that doesn't get credited for it. And just unfortunately falls at the feet of Caitlin Clark, because with Caitlin Clark came excitement. It came 3-pointers and ball handling skills, and it came great passing. I think she's still one of the best passers in the league next to Chelsea Gray and Sabrina Ionescu. But for the most part, people disregard other talents that other players have, because we have players in the league that can score and that's just as great as Caitlin Clark. Asia Wilson, she's a 3-time champion, and what she's been able to do with the Aces and what that whole pedigree of what the Aces have been able to do, it's just been phenomenal. And we don't talk about that enough because we talk about Caitlin Clark on the Nike deal she has with the shoe, and we talk about her endorsements with Gatorade and State Farm, and that's cool. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to respect those who came before you, and I think that's what Asia comments were leading to, and that's what, in context, in the article was saying, because we've heard podcasters and commenters talk bad about the league and talk about how much they should be kissing the feet of Caitlin Clark and things like that. But it should be the reverse, actually, because these players have kept the league up so she can have a place, an avenue to go to be able to showcase her talents and get these endorsements and get the money that they're asking for. Because we know that when these players were protesting for better pay, i.e., when Nafisha Collier and others were trying to get the pay, we know that players like Caitlin Clark and others who were more on the wealthier side really didn't come to their defense. They kind of just stood back. And that's for a reason because these players are trying to make a living. They shouldn't have to play overseas in the summertime. They should have the benefit of being able to just hang out with their families and spend time with their loved ones in the off season, but they don't have that luxury all the time. That's why we have an unrivaled league right now that's beheaded by Nafisha Collier and Brianna Stewart that they're doing, and they're doing an exceptional job. But hopefully, with this new CBA, they won't have to do, you know, they won't have to do the unrivaled or play overseas, and that's what put a lot of players in tough spots with that. So I think Asia's 100% right when she talks about the league and talks about how Caitlin Clark erased the history. And I don't want to say Caitlin Clark specifically, but the fanboys and fangirls of Caitlin Clark that train what that came with. It came with resentment for the league, and people just did never watch the league before, and they had comments that were just unfair and just untrue for the most part about the league. Of course, Caitlin brought more excitement, and she brought more pizzazz to the league. But when you watch the league, if you really pay attention to these games, there's a lot of players that have those characteristics of a Caitlin Clark. They might not have all three or four of those, but we have great passers, they have great scorers, they have just great leaders in the league. And they have those abundant throughout the league. And there's a lot more parity in the league, especially with the more teams that they're bringing in. So once there are more teams come in, we'll see even more parity. And I always talk about those players in the college that are coming back, coming to the league in a few years. But unfortunately, they have to stay 4 years in the women's basketball before they can go pro. So it'll be a while before we get that fruition, but it's definitely on the way. It definitely will be there. So, always pay respects to those Cheryl Swoops and Lisa Leslie's and Tamika Catchings and Diana Taurasi, Rebecca Lobos, Coach Don Staley, what she's doing in South Carolina, but she was good in the league and WNBA as well. So um, you don't have to be disrespectful to the forefathers in order to put up the new class. And that's what seems to be the trend in today's sports and just in general in life today. So you don't have to do that. So I totally agree with Asia on everything she said about, when Caitlin entered the league, that it, it somewhat erased the history of the WNBA, but we don't have to erase it. We can just, still just add to it. So tell me what your thoughts about Asia's comments about Caitlin Clark. And until next time, I'll see you next time.